Being a teacher, one of the most important things we need to make sure we understand is unit planning. This goes for both the curriculum that we're going to be teaching and the instruction that we will be giving. So to begin with, we're going to talk about the transformation of curriculum. Way back when schools first started, they followed a curriculum called curriculum-centered method, and this rarely allowed students to be involved in decisions about the classroom, along with how the lesson should be taught to them to focus on their needs, abilities, and the goals of the teacher. So they weren't allowed to have a say in what they wanted to learn, how they wanted to learn it, and what they wanted their teacher to teach them, and how. This curriculum stressed memorization, so it was all about learning vocabulary, memorizing it, not having any way of interpreting how to get to the point A to point B. However, over the past decade, the teachers have switched to a learner-centered method, and this is the complete opposite of curriculum-centered. In learner-centered method, students are involved in how they learn and how they are assessed, and this method incorporates their unique needs and interests, so the students are able to choose what they want to learn and how to learn it based on what they feel comfortable doing and where they want to get at in life. This method stresses critical thinking and problem solving, so rather than memorizing things, you learn how to get from that point A to point B. So the current curriculum style that we use is actually a blend of these two, and so teachers combine both methods to connect new materials with prior knowledge, whether it be prior knowledge from a past class or from the past class period. They use problem-based learning, cooperative learning, simulations, inquiry methods, and hands-on experiences. So rather than assessing based on content, they assess whether you know how you got to the content area. Within this curriculum style that we now use, students set their own goals in their lessons. They choose their learning activities, how they're assessed. They even schedule and lead conferences between teachers and parents to say how they want to continue on with their learning. Teachers also use an open-ended experience, so rather than giving a assessment that has all true or false, where it's one correct answer, they give projects that don't necessarily have a right answer and that allows our students to explore their options. This allows the students to transfer knowledge and skills to their real life. And then teachers also now are learning how to give the correct amount of praise and feedback to both encourage their students to improve and to tell them that they did a good job. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a unit of instruction. And this is a series of lessons organized around a single theme. So let's say in our business education classes, for example, our single theme, if we are teaching a personal finance class, could be savings plans. So the instruction provides teacher with an overview of the unit. So unit being savings plans, you would then know, oh, I'm going to teach my students how they can save and invest their money to better their future. So the unit would then have a range of learning activities to help meet this overview of the unit that you want to teach. The lesson also should focus on different subject areas that the theme accompanies. So again, the savings plans, you would include math into that. You can include English into that. You can include history into that, talking about how savings plans have changed over the years. There's many different ways that you can incorporate subject areas into business. So in order to create a meaningful lesson within the units, there's several things that you can consider whenever you're trying to construct this unit and construct the lessons within it. So you need to understand the sub-themes. So the sub-themes for a savings plan would then be the different types of savings plans. It would be a savings account, a CD, an investment plan, stuff like that. Those are the sub-themes for the overall topic. You should also know the outcomes and what you want your students to get out of the end of the lesson. You shouldn't teach anything without understanding why you're teaching it. Your unit should also align with standards given by both Kansas and national standards, as with every lesson that you ever teach. You should also know where you're going to go with your lesson, how you're going to teach it, how long it'll take, and where your next step is going. Resources and activities should always be known for the unit and what you want them to do. So if you're going to have them use a special website or a special activity, you should know that ahead of time. And you should also know how you're going to assess your students at the end of the day to understand if they actually learned what you wanted them to. So when creating a unit plan, there's several do's and don'ts that you don't want to follow, which I guess you guys can guess by looking at this chart. The do's that you should do for unit planning all goes along with understanding what your students need. You shouldn't plan something that doesn't allow them to have any sort of creativity within their lesson. You don't want to give them a strict boundary of where they need to be. You should give them guidance to know what they need to do, but allow them the choices to go from there. You should, as I said, you need to incorporate several content areas. This allows them to use their other knowledge and put it to work. You should also be creating a plan that will keep their attention and check for understanding. You should be able to assess them both in the middle, prior, and at the end of the assessment, or at the unit, just to make sure that they know where they're at and that you know that they're on track. When creating a lesson, you shouldn't have a hurried lesson that has no thought within it. You should be able to know your lesson from head to toe. You should be able to say, this is what we're going to start with, this is what we're going to do on day 3, and this is what we're going to do at the very end. And of course, you shouldn't create a lesson with no end in mind. If you don't know what you want your students to gain at the end of this, then you're probably not going through the steps of a useful unit plan. So to tie everything together, the best unit plan that a teacher can create, it brings elements from all different disciplines. As I've said, it allows for student choice to some extent. You don't want to give them the topic and then just let them go haywire with whatever they want to do with it. But rather, you should guide them in the right path that will get them from point A to point B, so that it matches the needs of the student and what they want to accomplish. And no matter what you're teaching, you should create activities that creates an interest in the students so that they want to continue on with this. They want to know how they can incorporate it and they are willing to learn. So if you want to know more about unit planning and how to create a useful lesson, here are some sources you can use. And just know that a useful unit plan doesn't always mean it's the easiest, but rather means that it's in the best interest of your students.